thing that's common is that everybody hates ISIS. Now, the PKK, which is a part of the Kurds, as you know, is probably worse at terror and more of a terrorist threat in many ways than ISIS.
إيرو تيروريست آمن أنا أول إيرو تيروريست أو كاسة كو لزاروك أكتر ده صاري دكتور.
So we're in southeast Turkey on our way to a small town called Cizre, which is near the Syrian border. And we're on our way there because the youth wing of the PKK, the YDGH, has claimed autonomy there and have taken over certain Kurdish neighbourhoods by digging trenches and setting up roadblocks. This has caused a lot of fighting, there have been gun battles, and 3 days ago the military shot dead a 14-year-old boy. The PKK is a Kurdish resistance movement fighting the Turkish state for Kurdish rights since 1984. Now in a peace process with Turkey, who classifies the PKK as a terrorist organisation, their fighters are battling the Islamic State on the front lines in Iraq and Syria. In the town of Cizre, the PKK's youth wing, known as the YDGH, have been recently involved in gun battles with the security forces and Turkish Hezbollah in some of the worst fighting in the area for years. After gaining access to the YDGH in Cizre, Vice News went to meet with them at one of their many armed checkpoints, which are manned every night from 7 AM to 7 PM. By the time we got to Cizre, at least 6 Kurds had already been killed in the streets. We managed to make contact with the YDGH and they said they would lead us to their neighbourhood, the one that they control. As they led us up here, as soon as we got around the corner, we saw maybe 15, 20 guys, all with masks on. We've seen at least 2 pretty big assault rifles, so presumably this is their neighbourhood and it very much looks like they have the arms to control it. So you're the commander of this checkpoint, right? Can you explain to me exactly what it is you guys are doing here?
أم لقال خا دفارزن أم لحجكري قال خوانا أم لبر قال خوا أم لكولانا دنا أم ناخذن تزيد شبه أم ناخذن تشتري قريش شبن جبر وياكي أم جبر قال خوا صار بيانا.
Could you show us what it is you're doing? Yeah.
لدجمن دخازي أم كولان ذاكريبن دخازي إيريشة ما بكي جبر وياكي ما أفدر كولانا ما عندك فاكرنا دخانا كو دجمن لإيريشة ما ناكي. لجوانا داز ناكد لجوانا قتل ناكي.
Why did you guys start this in the first place? Why did you decide to take over the neighborhood and run it for yourselves?
هم جبر دجمن هم جبر إنسان يكو قريش إيريش قريش يعني إنسان يقدس فوجتي لباس نامايا ويشترجين نامايا أم فوجي قتل نامايا لباس تكس جبر يدقاش نكاري لفوجتي لفرا لأوجي ترك بندهاتن فرا إيريش قريش ذكرن أو جبرا ما فاقش كريا لجوانا فاقش كر.
Is what you do here connected to, you know, the YPG in Syria and the PKK on the front line in Kobani?
يرو أمشي دخازن لوك لهافالان هباجي جاسترة أمشي لهافال وانا من الريام ويا أمشي دخازن عيني وخابات بكن أمشي دخازن.
In the Turkish media recently, they've been saying that your actions doing things like this are actually not positive and are disrupting the peace process. What would you say to that?
أنا جاهزي دبيجي دخازنش جاهزي ببرسن يرو جوانين يا دقاشي جبر خوا لجوا زاروك 14 سالي كانجي كشتيا يرو لدولتا أخبي دولتا ترك لجوانا كيما شو اللي خد هات لراس قالا في شاك برداي كشت شايتي خس تشتاقنا كري ليش ايش دات إيريشي قري ساكر يرو قاتل آمن أنا أول يرو تيروريست آمن أنا أول.
So we're about to go meet the family of Umit Kurt, the 14-year-old who was shot dead by Turkish special forces just 5 days ago.
يعني ایمان ند که کره مکشتیم دیگه ساخ یه سپی مل دست دایی مل دایی قلبی را داخسی.
I have to ask, some people in the media in Turkey have been saying that because the paramilitaries like the Yedagahash are in this area, if they didn't have the guns, then perhaps the special forces wouldn't be here. I mean, what do you think to that?
برو بی تو زلطان کشته بیجی باشه چی دی بیجی کره من ناوی وقتی از یکی بکشن زلطان زی وقتی علیک افترا مراد که دولتی کشته نیت اول شی دی بیجی بیجی یعنی گنده ما تشتم تیدد بینن جلت شکی ناس بحی بسریمه دولت ترکی جلت شی ناس بحی بینی سریمه ام جویت ترس ام قلنا هی يوالي شكي عمي حمي خوش تبدا شاوطين والله اللي ما بجاز رم خافي خوين داش قهر شاوطين قلتني ما خلاص ما بها قلت اني نادي ازبج اللي من ساكن ايش قهر بس خنتي مالك قال حاجتك ناقلك
We just turned up in the neighbourhood where Umit Kurt was shot 5 days ago, and as soon as we got here, we saw the YDGH. Good to meet you. What are you doing here? Can you explain to me?
جاي من نقطة معنا أبدأ جي النقطة إميت قورتا بعد النقطة إميت قورت نقطة ما ولا بيدا دشة جدي محلسي قوم بلا دقيقة حتى دشة وده بيقاسكي باشا لباله ام تخوزي دشمن نكبت تاخي ماده چه ما دشمن كبت تاخي ماده حواله ما قلب برنداد و شهید كبده دشمن پسلای مازن تما ام پسلای کلاشکو بده ام نابرد دشمن ته تاخه ده دشمن برده ما شما دشمن که تاخه ده جوان ما امید خورد حواله ما شهید بده ها بده شدغولی هات بده ساکن نزن دشمن هاتیه کار که بچر مال خو چو انگار دشمن هاتیجی جیلان برن حال بده کان شهید کرد کار که ولی فقط دشمن ولی فقط بده کات کمت کرده.
Everybody says, you know, Yedagahash is PKK youth. Is that true?
بلا ترکاجی به باش بزانه ام جی PKK نبده ترکات بشن تروریست لبالم نه تروریستن ام ملت خود پارسن ام آقا خود خوازن آقا ما جزیره بوده افده کردستانه.
So you take direct orders from the PKK, is that correct?
راست.
We spoke to a commander at a different checkpoint the other day who said he felt like almost the Kurds here, or the Yedagahash at least, were in a civil war with the Turks. What do you think to that? Would you agree?
اما او چقا برس بده اما برسوا مازن بده و بلا بشقار باش بزاند اول ما بده شهید کرد بلا دولت ترکیه به باش بزاند ام خوینا شهید خو نایل عرده خوینا شهید خو دیجی اما روش کی برس بده دشمن ام خوینا شهید خو نایل عرده به سرک جیان نابه
As night fell, the police and the YDGH began to fight for control of the streets.
امکاناتی نه یعنی چه به این سواش همه دست ما دی.
So we heard a few loud bangs, and it seemed that the YDGH here have been fighting the police in the city centre. We've heard reports that the military have closed off all exits from Jazeera as well, and we've seen military APCs in the streets. So basically we've just moved towards the front of the fighting here. The Yedagahash seem to be communicating with each other in the neighbourhood. The trucks are coming around the corner firing tear gas, and these guys are pulled back here to this makeshift roadblock that they built. Yedagahash just told all the civilians, all the kids to get out of the way. There are Molotovs everywhere, and they've told us we can go through and push forward, so off we go. the clashes intensified, the YDGH spread out to the alleyways. Here they got closer to the police and special forces, who eventually opened fire in our direction.
So we were just at the top of this alley. The police or the military there fired live rounds right around here. This guy just comes out with a handgun, runs up to the top of the alley and just starts firing literally just after we've had live rounds fired this way. But they claim they're keeping hold of their own streets.
The next day, an order came directly from jailed PKK leader Abdullah Öcalan, telling the youth of Cizre to stand down. They responded immediately, stopping all armed activity in the streets. The following day, 12-year-old Nihat Kazanan was shot dead. A policeman has since been arrested on suspicion of killing the boy. There's now concern that the unrest in Cizre could threaten the peace process, which has so far quelled a war that has claimed more than 40,000 lives. With YDGH groups popping up all over the country and its members primed for war after the fighting in Kobani, Turkey could be heading into more conflict with its largest minority.
We take you now to the White House, where House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Democratic leaders are speaking. A bipartisan group of lawmakers met with President Trump to discuss his decision to pull troops out of Syria. Let's listen.
In opposition to the actions that he has taken in Syria, it calls upon the president to urge the Turks to exercise restraint, for us to have humanitarian assistance to some of the Kurds. Children are being killed there. And very, very importantly, and most importantly, it asks for a clear plan on how we're going to fight ISIS. I think that vote, the size of the vote, more than 2-1 of the Republicans voted to oppose what the president did, probably got to the president because he was shaken up by it. And that's why we couldn't continue in the meeting, because he was just not relating to the reality of it. Again, we are proud of our men and women in uniform. Those who have been in Syria have conducted themselves in a way that makes us all very proud, and I conveyed that to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. We had some questions about ISIS, and I'm going to defer to the distinguished leader from New York, well, from the Senate from New York, who focused on ISIS in the meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Speaker, and thank you, Leader Hoyer. I told the president that, being from New York, as he was, we're particularly aware of the problems, the terrorism that an organization like ISIS can create. And the fact that someone no less than General Mattis has said that ISIS has been enhanced, that the danger of ISIS is so much greater, worries all of us. I asked the president what his plan was to contain ISIS. He didn't really have one. He said the Turks and the Syrians will guard the ISIS prisoners. I said, is there any intelligence evidence that the Turks and the Syrians will have the same interest that the Kurds or we did in guarding ISIS? And the Secretary of Defense was, thank God he was honest, he said, we don't have that evidence. And so I said, then how can we think that this is a plan when there are Syrians and Turks who are not our friends, who ISIS, if they escape, does them very little harm? How can we let this happen? They didn't have any good answer. This is appalling. The president had no plan, no real plan for containing ISIS other than relying on the Syrians and the Turks. Then why did we spend a decade, billions of dollars, and lost lives in trying to curtail ISIS if on a phone call, on a whim, the president is going to undo all of that and turn this over to the Turks and the Syrians? I would also say one other thing. he was insulting, particularly to the speaker. She kept her cool completely, but he called her a third-rate politician. He said that there are communists involved and you guys might like that. I mean, this was not a dialogue. It was sort of a diatribe, a nasty diatribe, not focused on the facts, particularly the fact of how to curtail ISIS, a terrorist organization that aims to hurt the United States in our homeland. Steny.
Just briefly, you're going to hear the president say we walked out. We were offended deeply by his treatment of the Speaker of the House of Representatives. The president, in my view, has created a crisis in the Middle East, a crisis that undermines the world's confidence in America. This crisis required a rational, reasonable discussion between those of us who have been elected by the American people to set policy. Unfortunately, the meeting deteriorated into a diatribe, as Leader Schumer has said, and a very offensive accusations being made by the President of the United States. I have served with 6 presidents. I have been in many, many, many meetings like this. Never have I seen a president treat so disrespectfully a co-equal branch of the government of the United States. I'll yield to the Speaker and to the leader for questions.
I just want to say this other thing, and that is, I think the president was very shaken up by the fact that 354, I have to make sure I had the number correct, and that means a majority, a big majority of the Republicans
there are 194
voted.
Republicans, 60 voted against a resolution which said the president's decision was wrong and dangerous and lacking in giving our allies confidence that we would stick with them in time of trouble.
And one point I want to make that I hadn't made a moment ago. So Leader McConnell said he thought the president's decision was wrong. He said it in strong terms. I beseech Leader McConnell to put the same resolution that passed the House on the floor of the Senate. It's a bipartisan resolution sponsored by Senator Menendez, a Democrat, and the senator from Indiana, Young, a Republican. And we urge Leader McConnell not just to condemn the president, but put this resolution on the floor. Because the safety of America, the safety of the Kurds are in the hands of one person, President Trump. And the best way to pressure him is a strong bipartisan resolution such as passed the House to undo the damage he has done.
Thank you.
Go ahead,
What we
Steny.
witnessed on the part of the president was a meltdown. Sad to say.
Speaker Pelosi, did the impeachment
No, it didn't come up. It did not come up. Not at all. No, it did not come up. It did not come up.
When he called you a communist, can you just
No, he didn't call. No, he did not call us a communist. He said you. Yes.
He said, let's just clarify that. He said the communists are taking,
Some of ISIS were
communists, and you would be happy with
That might make you happy.
That might make you happy.
Listen.
No, and the Speaker said,
Yes.
yes, we walked out.
Yeah.
at that point?
Yeah.
No, at the point that he
later.
was.
Later.
When he started calling Speaker Pelosi a third-rate politician.
Which I said, I wish you were a politician, Mr. President, then you would know the art of the possible.
Republicans stay behind? The Republicans stay?
Yeah,
Say?
some of the other members on both sides stayed behind. They wanted questions. I waited a moment
We had
because I
our
wanted to
questions.
ask him the question about intelligence reports on the Turks and Syrians guarding ISIS, which I think is crucial.
We also expressed our concern that we have been asking for all-member, that be bipartisan, briefing to the House of Representatives on what is happening in Syria. It was scheduled for tomorrow, but they canceled it. And so that was part of our question, too. Why are you not briefing all of the members of Congress?
Thank you, everybody.
Speaker, tomorrow you're hosting the Italian president.